Good afternoon. It's Friday the 12th of June, 2026, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio today is Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And by video link, we're joined once again by Basil Valentine. Now, later in the programme, we're going to be reporting on the World Cup and the US visa shenanigans there. We'll have follow-ups on the situation in Belfast and in Albania, and a look at the UK's so-called sovereign AI plans, which will enable next-generation surveillance and censorship. But we're going to begin today with Starmer's rapidly collapsing government because the fight over defence spending continues. This is all about the so-called Defence Investment Plan, which is supposed to provide funding for the policies introduced by the Strategic Defence Review that was published last year. The Starmer government has delayed the Defence Investment Plan's publication. And as Brian was highlighting on Monday's news programme, and yesterday then, Defence Secretary John Healey decided that enough was enough, and he wrote Keir Starmer a letter. So this is basically what he said. The new era for defence required further investment through the Defence Investment Plan. He referred to work done in January on defence funding. And he went on to say that since then, you have been unable and the Treasury has been unwilling to commit the resources that the nation needs to defend the country at this time of rising threats. By the way, that's him walking out the door, in case you're wondering. The idea of an increasing threat from Russia in particular is a thread that runs right the way through the letter. And also a lot of complaining about how not meeting NATO commitments and also complaining that even EU member states are starting to spend and are doing a much better job of meeting those NATO commitments. Now, he did acknowledge the funding challenges, but he claimed that there are solutions for the midterm funding challenges. But then he went on to say that, however, your Defence Investment Plan financial settlement, which I was first given in full on Monday afternoon this week, falls well short of what is required for defence and the country at this dangerous time. And he said that after explaining to you that I would not be able to accept a DIP settlement that does not give our forces the resources they need, I'm now left with no other option than to submit my resignation as your Defence Secretary. And so he is no longer Defence Secretary. Now, he was quickly followed up, we'll just bring that back on screen, by Al Carnes here. He was followed by Al Carnes out the door. Of course, Al Carnes, as everybody will know, is Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for the Armed Forces. But Dan Jarvis has now been appointed as the Secretary of State for War in this country. And so the question is, what do we know about Jarvis? Well, he's former Parachute Regiment officer. He was the first elected mayor for South Yorkshire. He was then Minister of State at the Home Office for Security and then became Minister of State in the Cabinet Office. He has had long-term financial backing from recruitment sector millionaire Peter Hearn. Now, Hearn controls the vehicle known as MPM Connect and has given Jarvis £100,000. Yvette Cooper has also received £184,000 from this organisation, and West Streeting has received £60,900. So this is a big Labour donor. He is also a Labour Friends of Israel member. He visited in Israel in 2011 as part of a Labour Friends of Israel-led delegation. And this, Patrick, I thought was the most interesting aspect of him, and that is that he personally moved the prescription of Palestine action in the House of Commons in July 2025. So the question is, what are the commitments that Starmer has made? Well, let's just bring this on screen and we'll show you, because, of course, we've seen the fall in defence spending over recent decades, but Starmer was supposed to be aiming for 2.6% of GDP next year, rising to 2.68% by 2030 and 3% in the next Parliament. But this is all still well below the NATO target of 3.5%, as you can see on screen. And so the question that Starmer faced was, where was the money going to come from? He could borrow more, in other words, much more deficit spending, except the markets aren't really open to this one. And that makes it extremely expensive for Britain to borrow at the moment. He could steal money from the budgets of other departments, but that's clearly not something that he thinks that he can get away with. Or they could raise taxes. So it looks like none of those was an option that he particularly wanted to go with. And Healy, being the war hawk that he is, who wanted more toys, decided to throw the ones that he has out of the pram, and off he goes. And just as a, by the way, I'm going to mention this article in the BBC. This was their live coverage of this whole thing. And they reported this morning that Healy had warned in his resignation letter that Russia could attack NATO within 4 years. But that's not what Healy did. What Healy did was to quote Starmer saying this. Now, that might seem like I'm splitting hairs, but the fact is it's important. Healy was throwing Starmer's own comments back in his face. He wasn't making the claim himself, although I've got no doubt that he agrees. But that's how it seems. Patrick, he has thrown his toys out the pram because it's not enough money. He wanted to be able to support Ukraine in particular a lot stronger than we are at the moment, and he wanted to see much more money being spent in the near term.
Well, look, it's just an important point here. He's talking about how do they know that Russia's going to attack NATO?
Oh, they're just making that up?
Well, they're not making it up because Britain is involved in supplying weapons and drones and underwater vehicles and over water. There was a false flag attempt in Romania recently that could have blown the war up to another level. That got caught. That was Ukraine. Britain is supplying and involved in Storm Shadow missiles, hitting Russia in Russian territory, killing Russian civilians. So if Russia responds, they're not telling you the whole story. He's talking about this threat from Russia. And he's saying, well, we don't have a financial settlement for our defense spending. What's Britain doing to make a negotiated settlement happen with Russia and Ukraine? A peaceful negotiated settlement? Nothing. Instead, they're egging the Ukrainians on with our weapons, our technology, our military advisors on the ground in Ukraine to hit Russia and kill Russians in Russia. So they're asking for a war, and then they're turning around and telling you, oh, well, NATO expects that Russia's going to attack NATO. No, they're going to retaliate if you keep killing them and keep attacking them and keep trying to paralyze their state or their government or hit their oil refineries so that they can't, trade or export fuel. That's an act of war. Britain is involved, as well as other NATO countries, in egging Russia on to retaliate so they can turn around and say, we were right all along. Russia's the aggressor. This is utterly insane what they're doing, and it's total deception on the part of the government.
Absolutely. Now, Patrick, let's move on over to Iran then, and the United States as well, because it seems like it's on off constantly. Trump's going to attack, then he isn't going to attack. What on earth is going on?
He's flip-flopped about 4 times in the last 48 hours. So this is the latest. But again, caveat, everybody, this could change till the program ends, and it could change again in the evening, and then again when he wakes up in the morning here. As of today, as of now, Trump calls off a military strike on Iran hours after threatening total escalation. And so that's the story you're getting from the White House, and on again, off again. Oh, Iran is not going to sign a deal. Now we're going to attack them until they sign the deal. But now it looks like Iran wants to make a deal, so we're going to back off. What's actually going on here? Well, let's just cut through all of the static and the noise. Here is Professor Mohammed Marandi here, explaining exactly what happened. This is from Tehran. He's a professor at the University of Tehran and an expert in international relations, a very popular pundit on Western media. While the U.S. made a noticeable concession in the text of the agreement on Wednesday and presented it to Iran through the Qatari mediator, it also launched a media and intimidation campaign to suggest that Iran had backed down under the threat of bombardment. But now, in the real world, Trump has backed down, accepted the same text from 2 weeks ago, and is awaiting final approval from Iranian officials. The problem, Mike, is that Trump keeps changing the deal. So in other words, I don't really believe that Washington has any interest in a deal. But what is a deal? How do you define a deal? It's not an accord. It's not a treaty. It's not any kind of binding agreement. It's not even a memorandum of understanding. Trump is trying to redefine international relations and diplomacy by doing no diplomacy. And that is the source of all of the problems here. I think it's by design. I don't think the U.S. has any intention of having any kind of settlement. They want a long, burn on this war along with Israel. So just to remind people, so here's Trump. How many times has he said, we're close to a deal, we're going to have a deal, they want to have a deal, I want to have a deal, no, they want to have a deal. Here is a good summary of all of that since March.
We have major points of agreement. They want to make a deal. And we are very willing to make a deal.
Well, I think we're going to end it. I can't tell you for sure when they want to make a deal so badly. You have no idea how badly they want to make a deal.
They want to make a deal so badly. I do see a deal in Iran. We were very close to a deal.
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over.
It's looking very good that we're going to make a deal with Iran, and it's going to be a good deal. This process should go very quickly. We're going to end that war very quickly. They want to make a deal so badly. We think we're close to a deal, and that's okay. We're in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal.
Today makes 39 times that he has said something like that.
When you're getting lambasted by Anderson Cooper over warmonger, you know things are just not going well for the Trump administration. Just to remind people, lastly, Mike, just yesterday, he said that we're going to put troops on Karg Island, and we're going to take Iran's oil, and we're going to take control of Iran's oil and how it's sold on the global market, like we did with Venezuela, because it was such a resounding success.
Right.
That's what he said yesterday. And then this flip-flop happened. So, like, what to believe, who knows? There's no deal. Trump doesn't even have any communication with the Iranians. They're working through mediators, and Iran has not agreed to anything of these maximalist terms that the U.S. is trying to continue to keep imposing. When they get close to some kind of agreement, Trump comes in with some maximalist deal, and you see his surrogates on Fox saying, Lindsey Graham, General Keane, General Keith Kellogg, all saying the same thing, some extremist demands, and then all of a sudden he's repeating that. And then they're playing the oil markets and the stock market at the same time. So that's a lot of what's going on. They're making tons of money off all this flip-flopping.
Is Iran going to lose patience at some point?
No, Iran is locked in to their position. They haven't changed, just like the Russians haven't changed with Ukraine. The United States is kerfuffling around. So Donald Trump, Trump can't make deals. He's not a good deal maker, despite his supposed reputation. They've failed in Ukraine to do anything. They've failed in Gaza to do anything. They've failed in Lebanon, and they're failing with Iran. On every single major geopolitical flashpoint, Trump has been an abysmal failure, and he'll continue to fail because they don't have the personnel or the political will to do what it takes to get any kind of negotiated settlement anywhere in the world. I think the receipts are in already.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. Basil, let me welcome you to the program. And of course, the other news this week is that the World Cup has started.
Yes, it's finally underway, Mike, with wins for Mexico in the Azteca in Mexico City, and also a win for South Korea last night in their match against what's now called Czechia, which we always knew, of course, as the Czech Republic. But the whole thing has been beset by one disaster after another over the last couple of weeks, with incredible price gouging by everybody from the Chicago Transit Authority to, of course, FIFA themselves. And enormous controversy as well over the allocation and validation of visas, not just for fans and teams, but also for officials. The task force, of course, everything has to start with a task force these days, is headed up by none other than Andrew Giuliani, the son of the former mayor of New York. And he was indeed appointed by Trump as the head of the FIFA World Cup 26 task force. And one of his first acts was to bar Omar Bartan, regarded as the best referee in Africa, a Somalian national. He was interrogated for 11 hours at the airport before being denied entry. He spoke to TalkSport just a few hours ago, and Giuliani said that Bartan had been talking to some bad people, and that was why he wasn't allowed in. Quite extraordinary stuff. I've no idea who these bad people were. It's the usual sort of Trumpian type response, isn't it? No specifics. Artan was then greeted as a hero back in his native Somalia at a football match when he got back there. And UEFA have made him the referee for the upcoming UEFA Super Cup match between Paris Saint-Germain and Aston Villa. So some compensation for him after being thrown out of the country. He'd even gone to the trouble of getting a diplomatic passport, but that didn't cut any ice, obviously. Now, also banned have been some of the Iraqi players have had a lot of difficulty. Ayman Hussein, the face of the Iraqi World Cup team, he was detained and given a 7-hour grilling. And the official photographer from the Iraqi team, he wasn't allowed in at all. A great shame. 10 hours he was grilled for before being told he was persona non grata. Talal Salah, he was denied entry after being subjected to additional screening checks. Now, you may think, well, hardly surprising. We all know that Trump hates Muslims and people from Muslim countries. They could all be terrorists, of course. So this is unsurprising, but certainly a lot more surprising is the fact that Scotland fans have also been barred from entry. This chap was told just an hour before boarding his flight that his electronic visa waiver, which had been approved, a lot of these fans didn't spend a penny on flights, tickets or accommodation until they knew they would be able to go, suddenly discovered that they weren't allowed to go, that a visa waiver that had been granted suddenly disappeared. Michael Wright had been due to head off to the United States for a dream 30th birthday trip with his brother and had tickets for the group stage games against Haiti and Morocco. But in the end, his brother went through security gates on his own when his visa status was switched from approved to pending and then finally to travel not authorized. Now, unsurprisingly, this has prompted MPs to start raising the matter with the Foreign Office. As we can see now in this clip, this is Jamie Stone, one of the Scottish members of Parliament.
I would have thought in terms of representing the interests of Scotland abroad, football is right there. Mr. Speaker, my constituent, Mr. Kenny Smith, has shelled out well over £10,000 booking his tickets to go to the States. He had a visa clearance. He actually had UK SC clearance, which is pretty high-powered, and yet last Wednesday his visa was revoked. This poor chap is in a very, very bad situation. Can I appeal to the Secretary of State to give him and me any assistance that he can to sort this out?
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his concern. I can assure him that on Monday morning from my desk in the Scotland office, I met with officials from the Foreign Office when I first had word that there were concerns in relation to the ESTA and the visa requirements. On Monday afternoon, I met with the Minister for North America in the Foreign Office to raise this concern. Of course, they were at pains to recognise that visa and entry requirements are a matter for the country concerned, in this case the United States, but they have already and will continue to make representations on behalf of cases such as his constituents. So if he would be happy to share details after this discussion today, I will immediately take it up with the Foreign Office.
There you go, Jamie Stone, the Liberal Democrat MP for Caithness and Sutherland there. Many of these cases, of course, remain in abeyance, outcome pending, but people have already spent money on flights and hotels and indeed matches that they won't get back. Here's the response of the American official tasked with issuing these visas. This is the next clip.
We're not going to allow people that have criminal or maybe perceived to have criminal ties to come into this country. I don't care what your situation is. We work closely with FIFA and the administration on a regular basis. We talk to FIFA and their directors constantly. Anybody that was denied, we made the case for and showed them why they were denied. Now, to get into specifics of it, I'm not getting into the specifics of it. But Iran chose that was a difficult path. If there was any country we wasn't going to allow in here, Iran would probably be the reason why we wouldn't allow them in here. But we did, and we worked closely with the individuals with restrictions. And so there was multiple, more than just these two, there was multiple individuals throughout. We have a World Cup here. We got a lot of countries that doesn't exactly have access to the United States, and we did a phenomenal job on getting as many people cleared as we could, but some people just can't clear. And that's just the way it works with getting a visa to come into this great country.
Thanks to Al Jazeera. Yeah, and to this great country. Well, even if you do make it through, you've then, of course, got to shell out for the price of a ticket if you want to go and see a live match. And FIFA have been accused of price gouging, as we can see here. Prices have gone up enormously. If you want a ticket to a qualifying round match, it could cost you as much as $2,700. And the final will cost you $6,000, believe it or not, up from $1,400 in Qatar. Prices have multiplied because FIFA are applying so-called dynamic pricing, when you're buying a railway ticket on Trainline or booking a hotel room through one of the websites. Apparently, it's all according to demand. But as we could see on that previous slide, the result is about 200,000 tickets are unsold, and there were vast empty spaces at the South Korea match yesterday, which of course deprives fans of the atmosphere that they would expect, and indeed they've paid thousands of dollars for. So even if you get inside the stadium, well, then you might want to have a beer or even a glass of water, and I'm afraid you're going to have to pay through the nose for it. The beer in the stadium's $18 for an American beer, and apparently that's for a lukewarm can. And the same applies for $19 for a craft beer. Beverages, water, $10.50, and $9, that's about £6.50 for a bag of nuts. Now, as we saw on that slide there as well, on top of that, FIFA imposed a ban on people taking their own water into the stadium. Medics warn fans could die in 40 Celsius World Cup heat after greedy FIFA chiefs ban reusable bottles from stadiums. Well, they relented on the ban on soft water bottles, soft plastic bottles, but those metal water bottles that people are fond of using and hard plastic bottles, well, they are still banned. You will be taken off you on your way into the stadium. And on we go with the nightmares, really, one after the other. They keep coming. Here we are. Greedy FIFA chiefs have banned water bottles. Football's fat cats already set to take in millions. Well, it's actually about 11 billion, a third of which is going to come from ticket sales. Have sent a special message to all ticket holders expressly banning water containers. How petty can you get? But if it's all too expensive, well, you can always make your own World Cup for 160 quid out of Lego.
Yes, thank you for that, Basil. This is the latest craze, apparently, making all kinds of things out of Lego. But anyway, Patrick, let's come back to the UK then and follow up on the Belfast riots.
Well, we'll talk more about the World Cup in extra time. There's a lot to talk about, just so people know. But just to kind of revisit this incredible situation in Northern Ireland here, the Belfast riots, anti-immigrant protests after knife attack. Now, we have covered this on the UK Column News earlier this week, but in terms of putting this into perspective, I think it deserves a little bit of reflection on what has actually happened. And a lot of people are looking at the situation and looking at it and saying, is this a pogrom? In other words, when you have politicians and big high-profile influencers egging on mobs, in some cases masked mobs, to go out and go door to door or to look for Black people or immigrants in neighborhoods, does that classify as a pogrom? Now, I want to direct people to this video, which we found on Instagram. Is from an academic. I believe she's from Manchester. Her name is Louisa Munch, and I think her presentation is very informative and speaks for itself.
Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. What we're seeing in Belfast, what we've seen in London in the last few weeks, are far-right riots. They are people who are using the violent crime of somebody who's not white to stage a pogrom. If you are confused why we are calling this far right, I wrote my PhD on the rise of fascism in contemporary politics. And yes, history does not repeat, but it does rhyme. And if you have not heard of Kristallnacht that happened in Germany in 1938, let me read an excerpt from Goebbels' diary for you. People's anger is raging. We cannot do anything, nor do I want to do anything. Let it run. Window panes fly to pieces. Bravo. Bravo. Kristallnacht translates as the night of broken glass. And this was the night of a series of riots that would smash up Jewish shops, that would take Jewish lives, because a Jewish man committed a violent crime against a German official. In that diary entry, Goebbels is relishing in the violence. And look, this rage, this discontent, this anger has not come out of nowhere, obviously. We have reason to be enraged at the current system. We have reason to be angry. But these emotions are not given language that is useful or empowering to people. One of the best scholars of fascism, Robert Paxton, The Anatomy of Fascism, if you want to read the book, states that fascism was an affair of the gut more than the brain, and a study of roots of fascism that treats only the thinkers and writers misses the most powerful impulses of all. Look, we have lost our communities. We have lost the conditions that allow us to feel safe, that allow us to feel secure, that allow us to access resources we literally need for survival. In my town where I live, there is a 15-year waiting list for social housing. We have a so-called cost of living crisis where people cannot afford to buy food. So many young people are out of jobs, out of training, out of education because there's such nihilism. People don't even believe in the current system anymore. They don't believe that tomorrow will be better than yesterday. And that's why all this nostalgic language in politics is so appealing to people. Think about make America great again, take back our borders. But instead of promising to do anything about these material conditions in people's lives, Robert Paxton says fascists need a demonized enemy against which to mobilize followers. If you are confused why we're calling this situation far right, these are the foundations of fascism noted by arguably the best scholar in the world on fascism. A sense of overwhelming crisis beyond the reach of any traditional solutions. Dread of the group's decline under the corrosive effects of alien influences. The beauty of violence and the efficacy of will when they are devoted to the group's success. The need for closer integration of a purer community by exclusionary violence if necessary. We should be angry, but we don't have to unite over rage. We can unite over the demand for better conditions for people to live. And it starts by giving people the language to name their emotions and name this feeling and not manipulate it and channel it towards a scapegoat.
Good summary from her, and we'll share her social media in just a moment. But what she was referring to there historically, we're talking about the Kristallnacht in 1938. And again, this is the quote from Goebbels' diary. Now the people's anger is raging. We cannot do anything about it during the night, and I do not want to do anything. Let it run, said Joseph Goebbels here. And again, the book that she was referring to, The Anatomy of Fascism by Robert Paxton here, and a salient part of the quote that she mentioned, fascists need a demonized enemy against which to mobilize followers. Now, that's exactly what's happening here. In the wake of the Belfast riots, who took to social media? None other than the leading right-wing influencers, or whatever you want to call these, what passes for influencers these days. Here they are, Tommy Robinson, a.k.a., or Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, pardon me, a.k.a. Tommy Robinson. The richest man in the world, Elon Musk, who is directing things. There's Nick Fuentes, and one of many. We just picked out Jack Posobiec here among the MAGA camp. And all of these people were really egging on the riots, applauding the violence and saying, this is what we need. We need this to happen. And all congregating mainly on X. That's the main platform for this. The problem here, ladies and gentlemen, is that Elon Musk owns the platform. So whatever he puts out gets boosted like millions and millions of times. And it's an outsized impact that his tweets have. And here's Elon Musk coming in via web link at one of the recent Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom. I don't know what they're called, but and look at what Musk is saying here, and look at his demeanor.
You're in a fundamental situation here where Whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
Today, Elon, I think the British public are telling the world that they're ready to fight back.
Good. Yes.
I mean, is the richest man in the world who, by all reports, is whacked out on ketamine half the time, can't even put a sentence together. He's stammering through that. And he's basically pumping his money into these rallies, bankrolling Tommy Robinson, and then calling for violence on British streets. Has Elon Musk ever been to Britain? That's the question. What is his interest in being so involved in meddling in British politics? This is the richest man in the world, a trillionaire, practically. And he's there. He's calling for, he's saying, if you don't choose violence, violence will come to you, basically. Right. Is that incitement? Is that incitement? I mean, it's incredible. So, I mean, people really need to wake up and realize the amount of manipulation coming from the oligarch class. Elon Musk is a globalist. He wants to put a chip in your brain. He backed net zero climate change for years. And then when that thing fizzled out and he sucked everything he could in government subsidies, he shifted over to become a conservative to back Trump. He backed Biden. He backed Hillary. He backed Obama. Elon Musk. So understand what you're dealing with here. A rank opportunist who's trying to get leverage over the British government for commercial reasons. SpaceX IPO. Watch this space. Anyway, here is Louisa Munch's Instagram. If you want to follow her, she would be considered on the left, quote unquote, but her presentations and some of her takes, and she has a PhD. So we'll leave a link to her social media in the show notes.
Yep, thank you for that, for Patrick. Now, if you like what the UK column does, we do need your ongoing support. Pick up a copy of the column, our new magazine that's available. Issue 2 will be out very, very shortly. But also come along to the 20th anniversary event taking place 18th to the 20th of September 2026. And very quickly, then tonight at 7 p.m., Jerm is talking about the collapse of the American empire. That's at 7. That's mislabeled, by the way. That's German warfare. And then at 9 p.m., Silk and Steel, the American empire is collapsing faster than anyone thinks. So a bit of a common theme between the two programs. And on Sunday, the second part of 1,000 Words featuring Charles Mallet is on at 7 p.m. Join us for that. Now, Basil, let me welcome you back to the program. On Wednesday, Vanessa was covering the issue of Palestinian land being sold in London. Some developments since then. What's the latest on it?
Yes, in a moment, we'll be joined by Dr Rahmeh Aladwan to talk about these issues. The genocide in Gaza, of course, continues unabated, and a new UN report says that Israeli authorities are now behind the so-called settler violence rampaging through the West Bank. There was a dreadful pogrom, not the first, on the Christian village of Taibeh, which is home to the Church of St. George. Now, you would think that an attack on a Christian village bearing the name of England's patron saint would have those same so-called far-right patriots up in arms, but none of it, of course, because they've all been brainwashed, hoodwinked by the likes of Tommy Robinson into demonizing all Palestinians on the basis that they are co-religionists with the Pakistani gangs in the UK. Joining us now, I'm very pleased to say, is, in my view, one of the most courageous and possibly, depending on your point of view, most controversial people in Britain, Dr Rahmeh Aladwan. Please welcome to the programme, Rahmeh.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
I think it's a euphemism, Rahmeh, that we still call the Zionist terrorists in the West Bank settlers when they've been burning people out of their homes, destroying cars. A 7-month-old baby was shot in the head earlier this week. Hardly a day goes by without a Palestinian being murdered. And yet the British government appears willing to let the sale of Palestinian land in the West Bank, which is very much part of the same situation, go ahead this weekend?
Totally, I agree with you there. The hypocrisy is so glaring. I think it's almost blinding us into this state of disbelief. But I'm not sure if you've seen the latest on this. I believe there's been an update today. The International Center of Justice for Palestinians, the ICJP, and the Public Interest Law Center have formally applied to the Met Police for a serious crime prevention order to be deployed against this event on Sunday.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear it. I hope it's granted. The land that's being sold in the West Bank, of course, all the settlements, as was reconfirmed by the International Court of Justice the summer before last, all of them are illegal. But the British government have finally taken some steps, along with some other Western governments, to impose sanctions on the settlements in E1 because they say that it makes the contiguous Palestinian state a physical impossibility. I mean, it's a physical impossibility anyway, isn't it? And the fact that the ICJP are taking out a court order like this to prevent the sale when the British government refused to do so themselves just illustrates the hypocrisy of the West, really.
Oh, of course. I think the more that these kinds of things happen, the more the British public is aware of just how controlled, or a lot of people want to say occupied, our government, our nation is, unfortunately. I think if it was any other so-called state carrying out these, terrorist attacks on natives and clearing land to be sold to just one group, one religious group, which in this case are Jews, and then coming to Britain to sell that land after those terrorist attacks and the murder, the dispossession, the theft. I think if anybody was doing that, of course the government would do something about it. But it seems that there is just this barrier for when it comes to this entity of Israel.
I fear you're right. The Israel exception runs through, well, not just the British government, but unfortunately it would appear the judiciary as well. Now, just today, 4 of the Filton 24 defendants are due to be sentenced by the man dubbed Mr. Injustice Johnson. Now, earlier this week, there was a petition to have him recused because he's been so biased in his handling of the case, referring Rajiv Menon, the barrister, to the High Court for contempt of court, merely for pointing out that the jury had the right to acquit if they wanted. He didn't allow the defendants to explain why they'd taken the actions that they did, all sorts of instances. But arguably the most egregious was that he didn't tell the jury that if found guilty of criminal damage, the defendants could be sentenced as terrorists. Now, that is going on today, as I say, outside Woolwich Crown Court. Have you got an update on that at all, Rahmeh?
No, I actually don't have an update yet. I believe they were... No, I don't. Do you have any updates on that? I don't think.
Well, there's hundreds of people protesting. I can tell you there's hundreds of people protesting outside the court. Very, very big demonstration there. And apparently one of the barrister's assistants was quizzed, harassed by security guards and police on their way into the court. Really quite extraordinary stuff. But so far, the sentences have not been passed. There was a statement from Andrew Feinstein, who represents an organization called Shadow World Investigations. He, of course, ran against Keir Starmer at the last general election. As he points out, the quadcopter drones that some of the defendants destroyed are key instruments of genocide used by the Israeli forces in Gaza for surveillance, targeting, and to kill. I believe they're the same quadcopter drones that have recently been deployed in Lebanon as well, where once again they've been playing the sound of crying babies in order to lure civilians out of their houses and then murder them. And yet, explaining that is the reason why you broke into the factory to destroy those weapons, that was not allowed by Justice Johnson. Extraordinary stuff, Rahmeh.
Very extraordinary. I think it's really important to continuously highlight that Elbit Systems is not a British company. This doesn't have anything to do with us. This is the largest private weapons manufacturer for Israel. What is it doing? Well, Israel basically exploits the fact that they can get contracts with our Ministry of Defense, and therefore our taxes can then be subsidized through that contract in order to help with the R&R, the research, the research and development, and then the manufacturing of these weapons on British soil. It doesn't mean that Israel doesn't produce actually a lot of its weaponry in occupied Palestine, so-called Israel. But if those factories on the outside of Israel stopped, what would happen actually is that Israel would have just the minimum that it would be able to carry out, the minimum amount of weapons it would have to be able to carry out this violence and this terrorism against the Palestinians in Lebanon would be quite restricted. And also most of its exports come from these factories abroad. So we would be hitting the economy. And obviously the glaring information that we always need to double down on is that, this is the largest manufacturer of drones. And you're right, these are the drones. Whenever we see, yesterday there was a video in Gaza of a man who was completely dismembered. It was the man who was filming was running down the alleyway, and there was just children, just young boys running past him, screaming. Some of them were totally shocked. They've just seen a family member, a friend, or a neighbor completely dismembered on the floor, and that was a drone strike. These are the drones that are being made quite literally on British soil by this private company with the help of our taxes. So, of course, these defendants try to stop that from happening. And, the link is glaringly obvious. The British state is stretching the terror laws to basically the absolute limit to jail these young Brits who tried to stop these weapons being sent. And this Sunday, the same British state is like rolling out the red carpet for this corporate roadshow to sell the literal very land that these weapons are clearing out. What they're doing is criminalizing resistance and protecting the subsequent real estate transactions after the Jewish terrorism in the West Bank and Gaza.
Patrick, I know you wanted to speak to Rahmeh as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Rahmeh, first of all, we commend your personal campaign fighting for free speech and for your rights as a British citizen, holding up the banner of all these freedoms. But on your personal battle regarding the NHS and the attempt by the government to silence you, do you have any updates on your personal situation? How is that going?
Thank you very much. Obviously, I've been arrested 5 times now for speech, for words, mostly online posts. I can't really talk about that because now that I've been charged, and that's an open criminal investigation, and the trial is set to be next March 2027. As for the sort of general medical counsel, my medical license side, I was suspended in November for 15 months. I had my review a few weeks ago, and obviously I gave it my all. It was a full day review, but they practically used the fact that there is an open criminal investigation to continue with the suspension. So the next step really and it's the only option that I have, is to go to the High Court to challenge the suspension, because I'm sure you're aware that when I was referred to the tribunal in September, I successfully defended myself, and then I was referred a mere 8 days later And then I was suspended, obviously also following threats from the previous Health Secretary, Wesley Streeting, and the campaign against anti-Semitism. So at the moment, it is just planning to go to the High Court and prepare for the criminal investigation.
It's really a case of double jeopardy, much like David Miller. She wins her case, and then it's not good enough. They have to quickly try her again because they're not happy with the result. How many times have we seen this? But further than that, Dr. Rahmeh, we want to say, keep up the fight. You are absolutely inspiring to a lot of people, and we really appreciate all of your efforts on all of these issues across the board. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think just very quickly, you said the double jeopardy. I think that is an ongoing clear pattern of the Zionist lobby. The trial today is a case of that. They are using every means, all of our so-called independent British establishment and roots like the regulators and the judiciary, and they're bringing us back if they don't get the required outcome. So I think there has to be pushback on that, because usually those activists really shouldn't be there, let alone being sentenced on terrorism charges.
And thank you, Dr. Rahmeh. And Mike, I think it's pretty clear there's pressure on government institutions by a lobby. We know which lobby that is.
Yes.
And that's what's forcing all of these sort of abrogations of due process and all these things like what she's describing there, double jeopardy.
Yes.
So it's not only a government issue, it's what's happening outside of government, putting pressure in from the Israel lobby and those sort of interests. And that's the issue. This is a universal issue. People should defend her on principle, just like you would be defending the barrister who is up for contempt for nearly wanting to uphold the Magna Carta, quite frankly. It's absolutely incredible. So any patriots and common law advocates out there, these are the people you want to be defending on principle.
Absolutely. So thanks, everyone, for that segment. Now, Patrick, let's move on then to BlackCore. And you've got an update on that.
Well, we did cover this previously. This is an incredible story. This is an Israeli firm that had been caught meddling in the French local elections in Marseille, trying to smear what can only be described as pro-Palestinian local council members in a local election. Now, this is a joint investigation here, and Harats and also Libération in France has reported on this. This doesn't stop in France, Mike. This is incredible. We'll take a look at where this heads. Look at this. Israeli firm BlackCore. This is a secretive cyber firm that's been involved in all sorts of activities around the world, suspected of meddling in elections in New York City, the Mamdani election, recent New York mayoral election, in Scotland, also in Angola and Togo. They have evidence here, says the head of France's cyber disinformation detection service, Viginum. And it goes on here. A joint investigation by Libération and Haaretz analyzed the digital footprint and uncovered a toolkit of influence operations. These are AI-generated autonomous systems, fake profiles, all of this stuff, routed through servers in Britain, in Germany, Finland, and Lithuania. All of those countries have one thing in common, all NATO states. Isn't that interesting? And so I think there's more that's going on here. Who is BlackCore working with behind the scenes? Are they working with any Western intelligence services? That's what we would like to know. This Israeli operation that is absolutely an arm of Israeli intelligence here. And the French it's incredible that this is happening in France, that they're actually cracking this case open, because there's so much Israeli influence at the top of government in France. But if you want more information on this, we reported on this previously, a great in-depth investigative article by Freddie Ponton. This is up at 21st Century Wire, BlackCore, Israel's cyber hitmen in French elections. And I think if you really go through the evidence, Mike, you might find there's quite a lot of activity here even in England, Wales, as well as Scotland, and maybe even Northern Ireland here. where does it end?
Good question. So let's then get a quick update on Albania, Patrick.
Again, we spoke about this last week, and this thing is now in its 7th day, the protests in Albania, as you can see on screen here. They thought this would die down, but it hasn't. And, this started over Jared and Ivanka taking, dominion over a private island, or it was really government property off the coast of southwestern Albania. There's Edi Rama, the prime minister, calls for his resignation. Now, this isn't going away. It is supposed to fade away, hasn't done. A lot of pressure on Rama. Now the assets have been frozen of Jared Kushner and his business associates, Saudi and Qatari associates, as well as others. So this project looks like it's hit the wall for the moment here. So that's what's going on. Here's Rama. If we go and watch, he is basically doubling down. He's claiming all of this is an Iranian plot to defame him and his government here. He's doubling down, saying this is all Iranian cyber terrorism. I mean, can you believe this guy? He is Tony Blair's protege, by the way. And he's also been mentored by Jacob Rothschild, the late Jacob Rothschild, as well as friends of Nat Rothschild. So that's Edi Rama, the president there. Now, I did an interview on Sunday here. We'll bring this up on screen with Albanian dissident who spoke at AV years ago, Olsi Yezhezi, and he basically blew the whistle on all of the Israeli influence and Israeli takeover of all the different sectors in Albania, as well as a massive land grab. I don't know how many thousands of hectares gifted to what can only be described as Israeli settlements, and the first kibbutz opened in Albania. So this is also part of what the protests are about, but you're not seeing this covered in Western media. But if you go to our YouTube channel here, we'll drop a link to this interview in the show notes with Olsi, but really breaks it all down in a very long and comprehensive way. So all the receipts are provided in that interview.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, let's come back to the UK. And this week, Keir Starmer gave a speech at Tech Week. Now, let's just have a quick listen to part of what he said.
The way I see it, on artificial intelligence, Britain has 3 options. 1, we could stick our head in the sand, pretend it isn't happening, and hope for the best. Well, I won't accept that. Option 2, you can remove the guardrails completely and ignore the consequences. No matter that some communities might be left behind, that wealth and power might become concentrated in fewer hands, that our children might face an increasingly unsafe world online. Well, I can tell you, I won't accept that either. Or we can take a third path, the Labour path, where we back the British businesses creating the jobs and technologies of the future. If government wants innovation to flourish, it must be a regulator, yes, but it must be more than that. It must be a partner. So we will use the power of public procurement to support British ingenuity and give our innovators the best chance to compete for public contracts. That is why today I'm really pleased to announce a new strategy to develop sovereign compute capability. It includes a major new commitment to purchase specialist AI chips worth about £400 million, providing a generational opportunity to some of our most promising startups. And alongside that, government will scale our testbed for AI compute systems, turning it into a national capability, supporting the British startups with our multi-billion-pound infrastructure programme.
So while some are complaining that he won't spend on war, they aren't complaining about what he will spend on this. And that, of course, leads to the surveillance state. Now, alongside Starmer's speech, Tech Secretary Liz Kendall announced a landmark £1.1 billion plan to boost Britain's ability to develop, deploy, and scale AI technologies and chips. This is, she said, all about pouring investment into to back the next generation of British chip companies to support growth and jobs, strengthen national security, and boost the UK's competitiveness. So she announced the AI hardware plan, which they say sets out how the government will back British companies developing the chips and semiconductor technologies behind AI, whilst also investing in the scientists, engineers, technicians needed to turn new ideas into products and good jobs in the UK. Now, this is all coming just a few weeks after she gave a speech at RUSI in which she announced the acceleration of the UK's sovereign AI plans. But the question is, what is sovereign AI? Well, it's theoretically the idea that nations should have their own AI capabilities separate from the likes of the commercial operators like Anthropic and OpenAI. But one of the biggest proponents of sovereign AI is Jensen Huang, who's CEO of NVIDIA, because, of course, he sees taxpayer-funded dollar signs, and Starmer alluded to this in his speech there. But that definition of sovereign AI may not be quite accurate, because we live in an age of word manipulation, as everybody knows. So consider the possibility that Starmer's use of the term is not referring to sovereignty over AI, in other words, owning the stack. I mean, that's largely what he was talking about in the video clip that we're talking about, but he's also meaning sovereignty through AI, and we're talking about here the state using AI for governance and security, and this is driven by a desire that is being expressed by the Home Secretary, as we all know, to build the panopticon alongside the desire that's been expressed on multiple occasions for narrative control, or as they like to put it, dealing with misinformation and disinformation. And this process has already begun, with Starmer also announcing this week that he's asked Apple and Google to start scanning content on people's phones to look for nude images. Now, Signal has decided to respond to that. They have issued an open letter, and Signal, as people may know, is the end-to-end encrypted app. Now, they've issued this statement. They're saying children deserve to be safe, protected, and nurtured. They do not deserve surveillance, funding cuts, and cover-ups. Children also deserve their human right to privacy, as does everyone. The UK government demand that all content on all devices sold or used in the UK is scanned on the presumption of nudity, using a dystopian combination of age verification and content scanning will not safeguard children. It endangers us all. And I think I could not agree with that more, Patrick.
Yeah, and just a quick comment, Mike. Chips, British chips. How long is that going to take to develop a semiconductor industry from nothing in Britain? Maybe 30 years. And how much government subsidies will be required to compete with the likes of China and the US that are maybe, 50 years ahead, that can do things at scale? So, I mean, I think, what about the chips factory up in, where is it, Peterborough? Is that McCain chips? Maybe that's the one you got to be worrying about. Yeah. There's no way Britain's going to, I mean, it's a pipe dream.
But it is a pipe dream, but as well as that, of course, it's not going to provide the kind of jobs that he's implying that it's going to provide. So anyway, we'll talk more about this in Extra. But Basil, let's come back to you now, and with some, in case you missed it.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, let's have a look at one or two stories this week that may have escaped your notice. Restore Britain, yes, they're up to about 14% in the Makerfield by-election. They appear to be taking votes almost equally from Andy Burnham and from Reform, and the result is that Burnham remains in front and the heavy odds-on favourite to win that seat, much to the irritation of Nigel Farage, no doubt. Some of the Restore people think that they can actually win the seat, believe it or not. They are the real insurgents. Let's see. Next up, we've got Carol Cadwallader, I think, talking about the invasion of Palantir and its insidious contracts with the British government.
It is absurd and insane that we have a rogue US military contractor handling our most sensitive personal data. Your devices are going to be monitored 24 hours a day. Palantir's had a very secretive contract with GCHQ. Palantir has a contract running our nuclear missile program. We have no national security. This company should be nowhere near the NHS. We have entered into a kind of colonial contracts with this superpower. Peter Thiel is an incredibly dangerous individual.
The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety.
JD Vance is a sort of wholly owned product of Peter Thiel. Jeffrey Epstein, he was a co-investor in an Israeli surveillance company. The thing I find most alarming about this and most worrisome is that
of course, let's not forget that Peter Mandelson himself was instrumental in introducing the British government to Palantir. Now, arguably the best thing he's done since becoming London mayor. Sadiq Khan has nevertheless kicked Palantir out of a contract with the Metropolitan Police, meaning that they now want to sue him. They're very annoyed about this, as you can imagine, and they've decided they're going to take the Greater London Authority, the mayor's office, to court over it. US spy tech company to challenge London mayor's intervention after he raised concerns over breach of procurement rules. Apparently, they were the only bidder for the contract. That's his objection. Of course, the NHS contract comes up for renewal in February of next year, and we have to keep up the campaign to get them kicked out. Next up, this, of course, particularly relevant. Lammy is forcing through the scrapping of jury trials. Well, we all knew this was happening, but in particular, MPs on the Commons Justice Committee have said that Lammy has failed to seek a broader consensus for the proposals before introducing a bill that enacts them in Parliament. And of course, with Labour's huge majority in the House of Commons, Parliament is effectively acting as a rubber stamp. If you can just imagine how the Filton 24 would have got on if they had been forced to rely solely on Mr. Justice Johnson. Next up, further to the legal situation with Lammy, of course, he's also now planning for AI legal assistance to replace human beings. A trial of AI assistance in Crown courts is going to be brought in an effort, as with the abolition of jury trials. The pretext is to clear the backlog of cases. You see, it's all just for simple, practical and logistical reasons, that you're going to be tried by a single judge who has an AI assistant, a far cry from a jury and human beings working in the court. Goodness me, where is this going to end up? And they say we have the best justice system in Britain. Next up, the British food scene was booming. Why has it suddenly gone bust? Asks Anita Chowdhury. Well, I would have thought the reason for that was obvious. It's because people cannot afford to eat out. Costs are spiraling. National insurance contributions by employers have gone up at the same time as disposable income has gone down. That's no doubt why top chef Tom Kerridge is amongst those cheerleading for Andy Burnham. Yes, him again. Apparently he's promising to cut VAT on hospitality. And Kerridge, the Michelin-starred chef, is saying the whole of the hospitality industry should get behind Burnham, who's called for a cut in VAT from 20% to 10%. Our old friend Ben Gavir, well, he's finally being investigated, this time by the Italian authorities, for alleged torture, kidnapping over the Gaza flotilla video. But he hasn't had enough kidnapping yet, because he wants to kidnap Lebanese women and children in order to pressure Hezbollah. Open call for war crimes there, it would appear. Extraordinary stuff. And finally, I believe it is, and finally this week, well, the World Cup is finally underway, and some world leaders were spotted in the stands at the opening matches with their national mascots, as we can see now.
Brilliant, Basil. Thank you for leaving it on a light note. Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick, as well. Thanks to everybody that's watching. We will be back in a couple of minutes on the live stream. If you're a UK Column member, stick around for some UK Column news extra. Don't forget German Carl tonight and second part of the podcast with Charles on Sunday. We'll be back 1 p.m. as usual Monday. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.